leader Chris Valenti, and today we're going to be diving into the rabbit hole of India versus Pakistan. A very long feud between these two nations, and just like with Israel and Palestine, it all goes back to the British. Fucking British, man. They ruin everything. I like to say this about the old British. The old British planted seeds of hatred, right? And now that the flowers are blooming, the motherfuckers who planted the seeds are dead and gone. So we gotta fucking deal with the consequences, and that is why we study history. It's very important. So what we're gonna do is dive into the rabbit hole of India and Pakistan, and just so you know, I'm a fucking white dude from New York. Yes, I studied history. I have a bachelor's degree with a major in history and a minor in political science. That doesn't mean I know everything. Okay? So let's cover what I know about India and Pakistan. I got a lot of links to show you. We're gonna try to do our best here, but before we do, let me remind you to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It costs you nothing, and it helps me immensely. Plus, this is real independent media. I have no funding, so if you do want to help financially help this channel, you can become a patron on Patreon for $5. You can become a member on YouTube for $5. You could buy some of this dope-ass Valenti Videos merch right down below, and you could use that 40% off discount on Ground News Vantage subscription. But, without further ado, let's dive into the history, huh? Let's start off with something called the British Raj, okay? So the British Raj is it's just a name for British-controlled India, right? And the British Raj was the colonial rule of the British Crown on the Indian subcontinent, lasting from 1858 to 1947. It is also called the Crown Rule in India, or Direct Rule in India. The region under British control was commonly called India in contemporaneous usage, and included areas directly administered by the United Kingdom, which were collectively called British India, and areas ruled by indigenous rulers, but under British paramountcy, called the Princely States. So, what does that mean in layman's terms? It means that in the 1850s, well, actually, in the 1850s is when the whole idea of the British Raj starts, but in the 1750s, the British colonized all of India, a massive swath of land with almost 1 billion people at the time. Now there's over 1 billion people, but what we ended up seeing was starting in the 1940s, right, when the British Raj had been there for almost 100 years, this idea of a two-state resolution started to rise. I know that's deja vu, huh? You're like, two-state resolution? That's the shit we hear in Israel and Palestine. And the Brits did that too. Well, yeah, you see, the Brits have a pretty common theme, which is to show up somewhere and then to pull what I call the Patrick Star, which is to go, what if we took the natives and pushed them somewhere else? That's how the British used to operate, right? So what we ended up with was this idea. It was called the two-nation theory, much like the two-state solution. Two-nation theory was an ideology of religious nationalism that advocated Muslim Indian nationhood with a separate homeland for Indian Muslims within a decolonized British India, which ultimately led to the Partition of India in 1947. Its various descriptions of religious differences were the main factor in Muslim separatist thought in the Indian subcontinent, asserting that Indian Muslims and Indian Hindus are two separate nations, each with their own customs, traditions, art, architecture, literature, interests, and ways of life. Now see, this is why I love being an American, or at least I used to until Trump became the president. America's all about that. It's all about the combination of cultures and letting all the different customs, traditions. I mean, New York City, bro, it's just a fucking melting pot of all different cultures, and that's what makes it beautiful. But seemingly, there are people all across the planet who are inherently tribal. It all goes back to tribalism. They are afraid of others. So they are fine with doing anything and everything they possibly can to keep their people in charge, right? And that's what we saw in India between the Hindus and the Muslims. And this is why when the British showed up, they said, well, why don't we just carve out a new area of India? We'll call it Pakistan, and we'll put the Muslims there, and we'll let the Hindus stay here. And what that ended up doing was causing massive division between these two peoples, with literally like millions of people dying in this, what would you call it? In this insane period of abandoning their homes, like relocation. Now, I want to show you the maps of India. Here is what India looked like on the eve of British conquest, 1764. As you could, like, yes, this is the India you know, but it's not one nation. It's one piece of land because borders are completely fucking arbitrary, right? But as you can see, we've got the Peshwas of Poon, Marathas, Mysore Sultanate, the Nizam of Hyderabad. We've got all these different tribes and peoples who are all living amidst this land, not exactly in unity, but they found ways to live together. And then suddenly we move into this. This is the India that you know today, right? The India and Pakistan, where all of these warring peoples have been split up, with the Muslim majority being pushed into this smaller region called Pakistan, which borders with Afghanistan, and they're dealing with a very large terrorist threat in Afghanistan, while the Hindus got the majority land of India, right? And obviously, the British had a better relationship with the Hindus than they did the Muslims, because the British have always done that. The British always give the short end of the stick to the Muslims. It's just racism. They are afraid of these people, right? So this idea of two separate nations, Pakistan and India, it starts off in like the 1940s. And pretty much immediately we move into this idea of this right here, the actual partition of India. See, in 1947, there was the literal partition of British India into two independent Dominion states, the Union of India and the Dominion of Pakistan. The Union of India is today called the Republic of India, and the Dominion of Pakistan is today called the Islamic Republic of Pakistan and the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Excuse me. The partition involved the division of two provinces, Bengal and the Punjab, based on district-wise Hindu or Muslim majorities. See, we're already starting to see what happens when you push two different people into two different boxes and make them try and split or share the land. Rather than forcing them to live together, come to their differences, find where they are similar, and live peacefully, sort of like we do in the United States, or we've been trying to do, they genuinely believe that if you just push people into their own boxes, they will not fight. That's never what happens. That is never what happens throughout history. It also involved the division of the British Indian Army, the Royal Indian Navy, the Indian Civil Service, the railways, and the Central Treasury between the two dominions. The partition was set forth in the Indian Independence Act, 1947, and resulted in the dissolution of the British Raj, or Crown Rule in India. The two self-governing countries of India and Pakistan legally came into existence at midnight on the 14th or 15th of August, 1947. So, after this idea of two different nations, the partition becomes a thing. Practically immediately, the same fucking year, a handful of months later, we get the first war between these two newly formed nations, India and Pakistan, right? So the first Indo-Pakistani War of 1947 to 1948, also known as the First India-Pakistani War, was a war fought between India and Pakistan over the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. So you're probably wondering, what is a princely state? Well, when the British Raj, when the British controlled India, they had these areas that they called princely states, which were going to be run by indigenous tribal leaders, but they didn't have full control. They would still have to answer to British rulers, British governors, who would kind of guide them in the way that they wanted them to rule this nation. So what it essentially is, these princely states are, how would you phrase it? They are secretly in control of the British, and they are designed to look as if the indigenous people get a say in their own life. They don't. And this is exactly what the British did in Israel and in Palestine. This is what the British have done historically in every single place that they colonized. And no, this is not that long ago. Someone in chatter just said that. We're talking about 1947, 1948. This isn't even 100 years ago. The people who fought in these wars are probably still alive. You understand that? So it was the first of 4 Indo-Pakistani wars between the two newly independent nations. Pakistan precipitated the war a few weeks after its independence by launching tribal Lashkar militias from Waziristan in an effort to capture Kashmir and to preempt the possibility of its rulers joining India. So Kashmir is this piece of land that is disputed between the Pakistanis, the Indians, and even the Chinese. The Chinese own a small portion of Kashmir. And this land has been disputed over for hundreds of years. They're constantly fighting over it, despite the fact that the people of Kashmir actually want to rule it themselves. But then again, it doesn't fucking matter. Nobody gets to choose anything in this world. It's all about who has the bigger gun. So after the first Indian-Pakistani War of 1948 comes to an end with a UN mandated ceasefire, we move into the Indus Water Treaties, which is very important, right? The Indus Water Treaty is a water distribution treaty between India and Pakistan, arranged and negotiated by the World Bank to use the water available in the Indus River and its tributaries. It was signed in Karachi on September 19th, 1960 by Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and Pakistani President Ayub Khan. On April 23rd, 2025, the government of India suspended the treaty, citing national security concerns and alleging Pakistan's support of state-sponsored terrorism. Now, April 23rd, 2025 isn't even 1 month ago. We are talking about 2 weeks ago. So what this is India has suspended the treaty, which is quite literally threatening the flow of water into Pakistan. And we talked about this in a previous video, which is, if you fuck with people's water, all bets are off. If you fuck with people's food, water, and shelter, all bets are off. You could be fucking Mahatma Gandhi and motherfuckers will still fight against you. You cannot do that. That is a death sentence, okay? And if you do that, you should fully expect terrorist activities to happen within your nation. That is not only warranted, but deserved. You cannot cut off the flow of water to a people. This is exactly what Israel did in Palestine. They said we're going to cut off the water and the electricity. And then Hamas starts to get more and more validity. What do you think happens, bro? This is exactly what happens. So, let me pull this back up. The treaty gives India control over the waters of the three eastern rivers, the Beas, Ravi, and Sutlej, which have a total mean annual flow of 41 billion cubic meters. Control over the three western rivers, the Indus, Chenab, and Jhelum, which have a total mean annual flow of 99 billion cubic meters, was given to Pakistan. India received control of 30% of the total water carried by the rivers, while Pakistan received 70%. The treaty allows India to use the water of western rivers for limited irrigation use and unlimited non-consumptive uses such as power generation, navigation, floating of property, fish culture, etc. It lays down detailed regulations for India in building projects over the western rivers. So this deal, which has literally been nullified 2 weeks ago, was one of the few things that were keeping India and Pakistan from warring with each other, because the water flow is important to the I'm pretty sure more than 1 billion civilians living in the goddamn area. Okay? So after this Indus Water Treaty, we move into the second Indo-Pakistani War. This time we're in the 1960s, 1965. The Indo-Pakistani War of 1965, also known as the Second Indo-Pakistani War, was an armed conflict between Pakistan and India that took place from August 1965 to September 1965. Now note, again, guys, these two independent nations haven't even existed for 20 years. And they're already in their second war with each other, because this is what happens when you put people who have historic ancestral feuds and force them to live on this fucking phony-ass, drawn with a ruler-ass border. The borders are completely arbitrary. Oh, sweet Jesus. The conflict began following Pakistan's unsuccessful Operation Gibraltar, which was designed to infiltrate forces into Jammu and Kashmir to precipitate an insurgency against Indian rule. The 17-day war caused thousands of casualties on both sides and witnessed the largest engagement of armored vehicles and the largest tank battle since World War II. Hostilities between the two countries ended after a ceasefire was declared through UNSC resolution. UNSC? like Halo. Resolution 211, following a diplomatic intervention by the Soviet Union and the United States and the subsequent issuance of the Tashkent Declaration. Much of the war was fought by the country's land forces in Kashmir and along the border between India and Pakistan. This war saw the largest amassing of troops at Kashmir since the Partition of India in 1947, a number that was overshadowed only during the 2001 to 2002 military standoff between India and Pakistan. Most of the battles were fought by opposing infantry and armored units with substantial backing from air forces and naval operations. So India and Pakistan have been fighting a hot fucking war since 1947 with just small little periods of peace in between. Don't forget that peace is abnormal. There has been more time with humanity waging war with each other than peace. Peace is not a state of normalcy. It is what we should be striving for, but it is not what humans are used to. So then after that, we move into the third Indo-Pakistani War of 1971. The Indo-Pakistani War of 1971, also known as the Third Indo-Pakistani War, was a military confrontation between India and Pakistan that occurred during the Bangladesh Liberation War in East Pakistan from December 3rd, 1971 until the Pakistani capitulation, bless you, of Dhaka. Of Dhaka on December 16, 1971. The war began with Pakistan's Operation Genghis Khan, consisting of preemptive aerial strikes on 8 Indian air stations. The strikes led to India declaring war on Pakistan, marking their entry into the war for East Pakistan's independence on the side of Bengali nationalist forces. So one thing that I want you guys to start learning real quick, is that this is not new. India and Pakistan constantly go to war. They constantly fucking fight. They have like 10,000 troops on the border each side, and they're allowed to fight with melee weapons and swords, but not guns. And they just beat the living piss out of each other consistently. This is not abnormal. After this third Indo-Pakistani War, we move into something that is called the Simla Agreement, also spelled the Shimla Agreement. This is a peace treaty signed between India and Pakistan in Shimla, the capital of Himachal Pradesh. It followed the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971, which began after India intervened in East Pakistan. The treaty's official purpose was stated to serve as a way for both countries to, quote, put an end to the conflict and confrontation that have hitherto marred their relations, and to conceive the steps to be taken for further normalization of India-Pakistan relations, while also laying down the principles that should govern their future interactions. The treaty gave back more than 1,300 kilometers of land that the Indian army had seized in Pakistan during the war, and Pakistan also gave back land that was captured during the war. Though India retained a few strategic areas, including Turtuk, Dotang, Yakshi, and the Chalunka and Chorbat Valley, which was more than 883 kilometers. Meanwhile, Pakistan renamed Chum City. So the UN intervenes a lot when it comes to India and Pakistan to try and get cooler heads to prevail. I mean, and the thing is, things have changed now that India is like it's like a Hindu extremist nationalist government, and Pakistan has like fraudulent elections, and both of these nations are fucked. Both of these nations are absolutely fucked, and they are warring with each other. And the thing is, tensions got extremely high starting in 1974. Now, why is that? It's because of the Indian Operation Smiling Buddha. It was the code name of India's first successful nuclear weapon test. So these two nations who have been warring for almost or multiple centuries at this point, now one of them has a nuclear weapon. This nuclear fission bomb was detonated in the Pokhran test range of the Indian Army in Rajasthan. As per the United States military intelligence, the operation was named as Happy Krishna. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs described the test as a peaceful nuclear explosion. That's the biggest oxymoron of the fucking year. A peaceful nuclear explosion? Suck my dick. So the bomb was built by scientists in assistance with the defense research. So essentially what you see is suddenly and immediately the Pakistanis realize, oh fuck, now the Indians have a nuclear bomb. We will never be able to win another war with them, which is why the Indians begin Operation Chagai 1. Chagai 1 is the code name of 5 simultaneous underground nuclear tests conducted by Pakistan on May 22, 1998. The tests were performed at Rasok Kills in the Chagai district of Balochistan province. Chagai-1 was Pakistan's first public test of nuclear weapons. China's supply of a nuclear reactor in 1993 and nuclear technology prior to that for the Chasma nuclear power plant helped to achieve it. Its timing was a direct response to India's second nuclear test, Pokhran-2. These tests by Pakistan and India resulted in the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1172 and economic sanctions on both states. So these two, they didn't, like, the whole world was like, you guys are fucking assholes. You're both fucking testing nukes. You're constantly warring with each other. You're going to blow up the entire fucking planet over some stupid feud over fucking Kashmir, something the size of, like, goddamn Central Park. Not true. It's probably a little bit bigger than that. But now these two nations have nuclear weapons. Now this isn't a feud just between you two. Now the whole fucking world has to get involved because you dumb motherfuckers may start global thermonuclear war over Kashmir, right? And immediately after the Pakistanis get their nuclear weapon, we move into a new war called the Cargill War, okay? So let me just give you the background of it here. The Cargill War, also known as the Cargill Conflict, was fought between India and Pakistan from May to July in 1999 in the Cargill district of Ladakh and then part of the Indian-administered state of Jammu and Kashmir. The conflict is also referred to as Operation Vijay, which was code name of the Indian military operation in the region. The Indian Air Force acted jointly with the Indian Army to flush out the Pakistan Army and paramilitary groups from vacated Indian positions along the LOC, which is their border, in what was designated as Operation Safed Sagar. The conflict was triggered by the infiltration of Pakistani troops, disguised as Kashmiri militants, into strategic positions on the Indian side of the LOC, which serves as the de facto border between the two countries in the disputed region of Kashmir. During its initial stages, Pakistan blamed the fighting entirely on independent Kashmiri insurgents, but documents left by casualties and later statements by the Pakistan's Prime Minister and Chief Army of Staff show that the involvement of Pakistani paramilitary forces led by General Ashraf Rashid. The Indian Army, later supported by the Indian Air Force, recaptured a majority of the positions on the Indian side of the LOC, facing international diplomatic opposition. Pakistani forces withdrew from all remaining Indian positions along the NOC. Right? Luigi's about to bark because she hears another dog in the hallway. But this is 1999, bro. This is 26 fucking years ago, okay? I'm 27. I was alive for this shit. This is no longer history. You are now moving into the modern era, so you can finally understand what is happening around you. Finally, we move into 2019. In 2019, the government of India revoked the special status, the autonomy of Jammu and Kashmir. So remember, this whole time we've been talking about this region, Jammu and Kashmir, that Pakistan has claim of, India has claim of, China has claim of, and it's because those areas are deemed autonomous, independent, right? Well, in 2019, the government of India just revoked the autonomy of it. They said, no, fuck you and fuck that. Kashmir and Jammu is Indian, which of course leads to a dispute between India, Pakistan, and China because they've been warring over these fucking lands for an incredibly long amount of time, right? The government of India revokes a special status or autonomy granted under Article 370 of the Indian Constitution to Jammu and Kashmir, a region administered by India as a state which consists of the larger part of Kashmir, which has been subject to the dispute among India, Pakistan, and China. So the reactions in Kashmir Valley was effectively suppressed through the suppression of communication with the imposition of curfew. So the Indians just essentially declared martial law and said, you're not allowed to resist this. Many nationalists celebrated, declaring the move to herald public order and prosperity in Kashmir. Among political parties in India, the revocation was supported by the ruling parties. All these different parties supported it, right? Of course, the people of Kashmir and Jammu did not support it. Neither did the people of Pakistan. Neither did the people of China, right? Which then, finally, with growing tensions, leads us to a handful of days ago, May 7th, 2025. India launches attacks on Pakistan after Kashmir massacre. About last week, a bunch of terrorists crossed over the LOC into Indian-administered Kashmir and slaughtered about 26 tourists. Now, these terrorists were not Pakistani militants. They were not the Pakistani army. They were not sent by the Pakistani government, or at least allegedly. And yet, India decided to respond by not only bombing Pakistani-administered Kashmir, but by bombing Pakistan proper, okay? And then Pakistan responded by bombing India proper, with civilians on both sides dying, okay? Now, the final piece of breaking news is this. As of today, okay, India and Pakistan agree to a ceasefire. Now, this is as of today at 12:45 p.m. It is now 1:30 p.m. So this is about less than an hour ago that they announced the ceasefire. And immediately it was violated. Drones all over areas of Kashmir, explosions going off, despite the fact that they agreed to a ceasefire. Now, it is important to note and remind you that both of these nations have nuclear arsenals. Okay? So we've made it all the way from 1947 to 2025. With India and Pakistan constantly fighting each other, and only over the past 26 years have both sides been nuclear-armed nations. India got their nuke in 1974, but Pakistan got theirs in 1998. Okay? This is not the end of the world yet, but it is two nations who could quite literally trigger the beginning of World War III. And people don't understand that you cannot deploy any nuclear weapon without beginning global thermonuclear war. There is no such thing as a tactical nuke. Tactical nuke is a low-yielding tactical nuclear weapon. The low-yielding weapons that we have today are about 20 times stronger than the ones that we dropped in Hiroshima. Even our small boys are 20 times stronger than Hiroshima. You can't do this. But anyway, that's all I've got for you for the rabbit hole for India and Pakistan. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It costs you nothing and it helps me immensely. And remember, this is real independent media. I have no funding. So if you do want to support the channel, there's a handful of ways you could do it. You could become a patron on Patreon. You could become a member on YouTube. You could buy some of this dope-ass Valenti Videos merch. And you could use a 40% off discount code for the Vantage subscription here on Ground News, located in the description below. Other than that, make sure you click that video over there. I promise you it's an absolute fucking banger. I'll catch you on the next episode of Valenti Von on Monday. Sunday's my day off, but I will make a video if the world ends. Have a good one.